A warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Ashna, and I am an HCM solution consultant at Ensaan Technologies and your host for this webinar. Ensaan Technologies is a boutique HR technology company with headquarters in Dubai and offices across GCC. We provide solutions in four areas within the HR technology domain: operational HR, management, strategic HR management, talent acquisition, and learning and development. Ensaan represents many of the leading and innovative global HR technology vendors in the region. We sell, implement, and support the solutions in the region. Today, we are presenting why games are the future of talent assessments, presented by Greg from HireVue. Let me give you a quick introduction to HireVue. HireVue is transforming the way companies discover, engage, hire, and develop the best talent by combining the power of on-demand structured interviewing, games, and machine learning for better hiring decisions. The HireVue assessments and video interviewing platform uses a groundbreaking combination of occupational science and rigorously tested predictive assessment analytics to help customers find and engage higher quality talent faster. HireVue is available worldwide in over 40 languages and has hosted more than 17 million on demand interviews and 1 million assessments. Its more than 700 customers worldwide include over one third of the Fortune 100 and leading brands such as Unilever, JP Morgan Chase, Delta Airlines, Vodafone, Carnival Cruise Line, and Goldman Sachs. Our presenter today is Greg Kiran. Greg is the principal solution architect with HireVue and works with their EMEA clients and prospects to help them understand the HireVue technology, but also the value beyond the technology. He has advised and consulted with many of the leading brands in the region, including IKEA, Ernst & Young, Barclays, and Emirates. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Greg. Over to you, Greg.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Ashna. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So thank you for having me today. Great to be with you guys. And today we're going to be walking through why games are the future of talent assessments. So just a quick introduction to the HireVue platform for those of you who perhaps are not familiar, and maybe some of you already using us today, but we essentially have a virtual hiring platform that allows our clients to really engage with their candidates in a much more modern and digital way than has ever been possible with traditional methods. We're continuously expanding the platform. Most recently, we've actually added a technology to help candidates engage very early in the hiring process. It's a chatbot, a virtual assistant technology called Alio. Some of you may have heard of it. It's the world leading chatbot and recruiting assistant technology. What that allows us to do is really extend our reach now even further than before and give our enterprise clients in particular a single platform from which they can deliver content and engagements and assessments and interviewing and scheduling to their clients and their candidates very, very quickly. Available in over 40 languages now, of course, with the very highest levels of security, data privacy. The main reason why a lot of our large enterprise clients come to HireVue is for that focus on privacy and security, that single platform, the ability to do very scientifically validated assessments, and of course the services we wrap around that with the 24/7 support. The single platform piece really is powerful in the sense that you can actually have candidates who start out by maybe coming to your careers page and starting to look for roles as job seekers. We know that in those early stages, some candidates can be put off if they can't quickly find the information they need. That's the reason why we've recently added the Alio platform to HireVue, just to really help in those early engagement components. You can even start to do some of that pre-screening with candidates to understand where they may be a good fit, and then by matching them to roles that are either geographically close to them or suitable for them in terms of their criteria, can really make that upfront candidate experience much more seamless and can lead to much higher completion rates. Once candidates apply, of course, then with our ATS integrations, candidates can be taken through a very seamless experience, as you see on screen here. So once they've applied, they can be taken directly to a one-step assessment. We have clients using our video interviews where the recruiters can ask a series of different interview questions and they can go and watch those and score those. We also have clients using our interview assessments where our technology uses elements of AI to automatically score the candidate's responses to structured video questions. The piece I'm going to be focusing, of course, mostly on today is this middle section, which is the use of game-based assessments to help candidates have a much better experience, much shorter and much more engaging than traditional methods of psychometric testing, but also giving your teams, importantly, that structured scientific input, feedback, and prediction over which candidates are likely to be the best fit for the role. Some of our clients go on to use, of course, also our coding assessments for software engineer talent, and all of those can be compressed and combined into one step that might take somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes for the candidates, but giving you a very comprehensive set of information here, which helps you quickly prioritize the best fit candidates. So I'm going to talk next a little about the science behind the game-based assessments and the reason why probably about 3 years ago we started on this journey. Again, some of you may be familiar with the concept of game-based assessments or gamification used in talent acquisition. So this is the component I'm going to focus most in today. So been around now for probably 5 or so years. So in relative terms, still quite new to the market, but we're seeing a huge move in this direction because companies now really see the value in being able to give candidates a much better experience, more immersive, more engaging, and of course, quicker. The psychometric properties of the games are, of course, very, very important. You're going to see some of that today. Still needs to be a validated and scientifically, approached assessment in order to give you that valid and fair and reliable set of results when predicting in this pre-hire space. So of course, when you're moving from an interview only approach to an assessment approach, just really allows you to start quickly identifying which candidates are likely to be a fit for the role. So on the left side, where clients of ours are using our video interviews, they've already seen great success in being able to remove certain other steps in a process. For example, a phone screen. Particularly when you have higher volumes of candidates, that can become still fairly cumbersome because you just don't know where those best fit candidates are and you need to watch every interview. When our assessments are then introduced, particularly the game-based assessments, their appeal being that they're supported in 40 languages and are therefore a great fit for global enterprises, the assessment score will automatically generate, and what that gives you is a much higher chance of predicting the best fit candidates. Very, very quickly, they'll be presented to your recruiters in a stack ranked, prioritized order. So let's dig into a little of how that's done. I want to give you the confidence that this is indeed built on that scientific rigor that I spoke about. As with any type of assessments company, you'd expect that they have a team of occupational psychologists underpinning this. And absolutely at HireVue, we have a team of about 17 masters and PhD qualified individuals who build this employability model. And when talking to our clients, they will design our assessments based on these primary pillars. The first 3 in particular, this first one here, working with people. When you're assessing candidates, it's important that you understand how do they work with others? What are they like in teams? How are they at building relationships? So that's what we call working with people. The second component is their individual personality and work style. For a long time, it's been known that the big 5 personality traits are predictive of job performance. Of course, at different weightings, some more than others. And work style as well. Are they the right individual for the role? Do they want to be there? The third pillar there, working with information, probably the strongest predictor of future job success, has been known for a long time to be cognitive ability. And if you're only to measure one thing, the science tells you that's a pretty good bet. The fourth piece over here, technical skills. In some roles, of course, it's important that a candidate comes with particular subject matter expertise to be able to perform that task. More so in professional hiring and experience hiring. So kind of drilling into those 4 areas a little deeper, HireVue have built out a competency library that helps us measure important competencies that sit within each of these categories. As you'll see here, the ones highlighted with the red square or rectangle are the ones measured by the game-based assessments. The other examples of competency shown here in each of these categories are often measured through the format of an interview-based question. So you'll notice here now we have good coverage across these pillars. On the left side there, measuring emotional intelligence. So things like empathy, influence, collaboration, impulse control. I mentioned earlier the big 5 personality traits. For those not familiar with that term, it's these: conscientiousness, extroversion, openness to experience, emotional stability, agreeableness. These have been shown over, again, many decades of research to be the 5 primary personality traits. Cognitive ability then in the third category there. Things like reasoning, visuospatial ability, mental agility, numerical ability. All of these combined would come together to be known more collectively as cognitive ability. Again, a great strong predictor of job performance. So it's in these key primary areas that the HireVue technology helps focus. But as I mentioned, underpinned importantly by that occupational psychology, to make sure that whenever we work with a client, we're accurately identifying the key job skills, the areas that are important to that role that lead to success, in order that we understand how to design an assessment. And the way we do that is in this approach here. On the left side, you're seeing a partial list of some of the competencies that we've built out in libraries that actually allow us to very, very quickly build customized assessments for each individual company, their individual roles or groups of roles, very, very quickly. So what used to take months can now take just a matter of short weeks. Essentially, we would run through what's called a job analysis to understand the key competencies that might apply within a particular role or group of roles, and then build out specific competency areas from our platform that map to your existing competencies or frameworks that you may have already built or we can build with you. As you see on the right side over here then, it may often include a series of recommendations on interview questions. It might involve our game-based assessments. So the key attraction there, particularly for international firms, is that ability to do this in 40 different languages. So just to kind of guide you through that process a little more, one of our team members, occupational psychologists, would run through a job analysis. And that's a very light experience where it takes a short number of weeks, where we'd work with your teams and start to survey or hold focus groups with incumbents, high performers, managers of high performers, as well as looking at job documentation to make sure we get a good understanding of the role in question, which of course allows us to then tie the assessment design to that. The outcome of that is typically an assessment that takes a candidate somewhere between 5 and 20 minutes. When you then combine that with interview questions, it could be that 20 to 30 minutes I mentioned earlier, with the coding assessments a little longer. Of course, these are designed to fit within your existing employer brands. The experience itself, you'll see in a minute, very, very heavily focused on that candidate experience, optimized to make sure that they have a good experience through that, and of course, and how that reflects on your brand. There's an element of machine learning involved, a subset of AI, which helps us with the scoring. Of course, we're able to collect so much data from the interaction candidates have with these game-based formats that we use machine learning to help us with that scoring algorithm, and then prioritize and stack rank the candidates based on how they perform in those assessments. Candidates then receive a feedback report, usually within 30 to 60 minutes. Important piece to mention down here, all of our assessments, including the game-based formats, are all tested for and designed to reduce adverse impact, but are also then tested during and after implementation to make sure that we have mitigated any adverse impact they may have found. Interestingly, we've also tested against things like color blindness to make sure the color palettes that we use don't adversely impact candidates with those conditions. Here's a quick example. What we would have run through, I mentioned earlier, is that job analysis phase. This is an example of a sales rep role where we've worked with a client and identified across those 4 pillars I mentioned earlier that actually from that master library of competencies available, these were the key competencies for this particular sales rep role. In the case of working with people, it was communication, negotiation, and persuasion. Then in this second category, composure, drive for results and initiative. In the third category, both cognitive ability and problem solving, and then some job specific knowledge over here in the technical skill space. What we're then able to do is help recommend some video interview based questions that the company ask, as well as a short game based assessment. In this case, it was a 2-game battery from our library of nearly 20 games now. And that means the average experience of the candidate is just 18 minutes in this case. Of course, they would run through that as one step and receive that feedback report that we mentioned. So highly engaging and highly focused on the candidate at all times. So what is it that candidates think about this? Well, we had some great feedback. Of course, one of the things we measure through our survey is what's called Net Promoter Score. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that, especially those who work in industries where you have consumers. The Net Promoter Score is that -100 to +100 score where consumers and candidates give their feedback on an experience. So great anecdotal feedback here as well in terms of what candidates are saying. A Net Promoter Score that we see an average of 71 is really delivered through that engaging experience. The fact that candidates can take this anytime, any place. The fact that they can do it in one step without it being prolonged and taking weeks and weeks for a recruitment process. And the fact that they're able to become immersed and enjoy the games without feeling too much anxiety from taking a test, which traditional methods of testing have often led to. So let's have a little look deeper then at what some of the game-based assessments look like. So as you saw there in the earlier example, the assessment the candidate is invited to is typically a subset of the entire set of games. So it's usually somewhere between 2 and 4 games per assessment. And again, that combination will be decided and determined during the job analysis phase. Give you some idea of some of the games here. So in that third category I mentioned, working with information, which is the cognition-based games, you'll see here that there's a large number of individual games. We'll have a look at it a bit closer as we go through here. But each of these individual games has different elements that they measure. So some of these focus on measuring working memory. Others focus on numerical ability, visuospatial ability, problem solving and logical thinking. And it's those combinations of the games which therefore give you that broader variety of focus by combining 2, 3, or 4 games together. A couple of examples here. So Symbol Span is one of our games measuring mental agility and working memory. The gameplay is very, very similar in all of the cognition games, where candidates will go through adaptive level progression starting at 1 up to a maximum level of 100. So in this case, they'll be shown a series of symbols or shapes. You'll notice them displayed at the top of the page here. And they need to look at this, memorize the sequence, and then replay that using the keypad below. The symbols have been used as a way to help reduce possible cheating, rather than using numbers or other sort of letters. It's a lot harder for candidates, of course, to be able to write these down or cheat in any or screenshot in any other way. So the idea here is that candidates would have to remember the sequence and play that back. And of course, as they go through the games, and you'll see this later, the levels increase as they achieve accuracy. If they get some wrong, they'll be taken to a lower level. So it's much, much more adaptive and faster than a traditional type of cognitive test. You'll also notice that a lot of the game-based assessments that we deliver have been built and designed on long-standing science and research. This particular one was a test format designed back in the 1990s, and we've just gamified that to make this a lot more engaging for candidates. Second example here in the cognition category is Pathfinder. Again, very similar and familiar look and feel for candidates. What they're being asked to do here is solve the puzzle by moving the blue tiles around to solve and join the two grey ends together. So you'll notice over here, there's two spaces and they can move these tiles around. So again, very, very easy for candidates to understand what's going on and you know, enjoy the game experience. But it's looking to solve for some of those visuospatial abilities, numerical ability, and problem solving in a very kind of immersive and enjoyable game experience. What else? Those other categories I mentioned earlier, the working with people category has a series of games that are designed to measure emotional intelligence. These can be a great fit for roles where you have candidates interacting with the public or with consumers, but also internally. So we have a series of these chat-based games here, which deliver an SJT, so a situational judgment test in the form of what looks like a WhatsApp conversation or some messaging app. So again, very familiar to candidates. They each have a slightly different focus. As team chat is aimed at a more of a individual contributor type of role, where a leader chat is more senior level with more complex conversations. Service chat very much focused on the types of candidates who may be working in contact centers, call centers, as we know a lot of those these days are communicating with customers through chat-based applications. As you're responding to and conversing with this fictitious colleague, you'll be taken down a particular path, having conversations, and we're measuring again, as in the same way as an SJT, the accuracy through that. Then you have other games like this, emotions, which helps to measure empathy and the ability to recognize emotions in others by watching a short series of video clips. And also impulse control, by seeing a series of fast-paced images, can the candidates accurately select the right one? So these are all focused on that kind of emotional intelligence space. And then down here, we have a game that measures the big 5 personality traits that we call Portrait. Again, very, very well known for a long time, personality surveys. I'm sure you have taken one yourself at some point. What we've done is turn that into a game experience where the candidate will see a series of 56 image pairs, and they'll just be simply asked, I'm more like this or like that. And they'll select the one that is more like them. And again, through that series of image pairs, we're able to build up a profile, an idea of where they would sit in the scale on each of those big 5 personality traits. So again, a little more detail on some of these. This is team chat we mentioned earlier. So this is, of course, what it looks like in a bit more detail, this fictitious conversation with Lucy. In each case, she'll send a message, and then you have to choose response number 1, 2, or 3, and then send that. And then you're taken through a series of 7 conversations in which we're able to capture and understand more about how they would deal with those sort of critical work incidents and dilemmas. And then Portrait, the one I mentioned here, measuring those big 5 personality traits, amazingly accurate. I've taken it myself a few times. I was surprised how similar the results were each time. In terms of, even though the content and the images are different, we have, of course, a much larger item base to prevent repetitive repeats of image pairs coming up. But it's very, very accurate and a great way to measure some of those other things in those other big 5 personality traits in a game format. Okay, just a couple of quick case studies, examples here before we then show a bit more of a demonstration, and we'll have time for questions and answers at the end as well. So, example here is a client of ours in the UK who their preference was to break out into 2 steps for their graduate hiring, the way they screen talent. So the first is through a series of 4 games played together in one battery, about 16 minutes worth, combining 2 cognition games and 2 of the emotional intelligence games. What they then do is they reduce that initial 20,000 pool of applicants to a group who then play and complete the second video step. Quite a lengthy one in my opinion, but after that step, they then reduce that even further to the number of candidates they're going to bring forward to interview at assessment centre. A slightly different example this time for another client of ours who initially started using us just with video interviewing and just found that the volumes of candidates coming into their pool was getting so large, they were at a decision point to either hire more team members or look to technology to help them with some of that automatic screening. So what they did is they combined our cognition games with their video interviewing, and that's together as one step, which takes a candidate just 20 minutes. What they then do is they take the automated scores from this and they move out of the system, the bottom tier, give them a kind of a very friendly thanks but no thanks. The top tier are automatically progressed forward, and they then manually review that middle group, because by combining the interview and the assessment together, they're able to use the scores to help prioritize and then use that middle group as the ones that they manually review the interviews of. So just going to kind of play through a quick demonstration here to bring it to life and show you what things look like from the perspective of candidates, first of all, and then from the hiring team. So there's an example here of a candidate, Sean Mills, who has applied to this particular vacancy through the ATS. It's been automatically invited to complete this experience. So to start with here, candidate just has an opportunity to kind of get ready on camera if there are any interview-based questions, take practice questions, and then question number 1 here, just to show how these layer together, is being asked by a team member. They've pre-recorded themselves asking a question here about a time when you needed to make an important decision quickly. So you're combining important interview questions with the game-based assessment, and this is what it looks like as a combined experience. Of course, you can set those preparation time, response times. Now into the second section is the game-based assessment. So starting out here with this first game in the battery, which is numerosity. Again, this would have been selected and decided during the job analysis. All of the games are preceded by a set of animated instructions like you're seeing on screen at the moment. These again are delivered in the full 40 languages, depending on the candidate's device settings. They'll be then played out to help them understand how the game components work, how to interact with the game, to really give them some confidence and chance to reduce some of that anxiety that might exist with traditional types of cognitive ability testing. So it's very, very clear and laying out the instructions here, all the different game components, to give the candidate a much better chance when it comes to the assessment. So in this case here, we then have the candidate start the game. All of the games are in that same mobile optimized format, which again means that regardless of which device the candidate chooses, whether they choose to do this on a mobile device, or on a tablet, or on a desktop, their game scores can, of course, be compared against each other very fairly because they've all gone through that very same experience. In this case, numerosity, what we're asking the candidate to do is combine the numbers to solve for the operations. In this case, by adding numbers together. Now you notice at a particular level 11, now it's asking them to subtract. Now these are just 30-second demonstration versions of the games, so a little shorter. The full versions of the games are between 90 seconds and 5 minutes per game. And the candidate then is taken through the games in sequence. So this one here is a test measuring working memory. The candidate's being asked to say initially, is this the same as the one step previous? So it starts off relatively simple, and then at level 21 here, you notice now we're asking, is this shape the same as 2 shapes previous? So very, very quickly, it becomes harder. And then when you get to 3 steps back and 4 steps back, it's even harder. So it's a very, very quick paced game here, but we're measuring that working memory and that ability to respond quickly under pressure. So this particular test was designed based on science that started back in the 1950s. So very, very solid research. This third game in this particular group is the Pathfinder that we saw earlier. So In this case, we're looking to solve the puzzle by moving the shapes around. Again, very familiar look and feel. And that face validity is a very important part of the games that we offer. If you're looking at game-based assessments, make sure you think about that from a candidate perspective. What you don't want is something that's too gamified, which may put some candidates off if they just don't think it's very serious. And also something that's not gamified enough sometimes can still feel a little too traditional. The balance we've gone for here with the HireVue games is something that's very face valid in the sense that candidates can see and understand what's being measured. The fourth game here then is what I mentioned earlier, Portrait, which is this personality-based game. We're being asked through this series of 56 image pairs, which one are you more like? In some case, it's intended to be ambiguous and it's challenging for you to understand, am I more like this on this? You might think, well, I'm actually like both, but which are you more like? Again, very similar to those traditional types of assessment, but it's in a much more immersive and gamified way. Then coming to the end here, we can watch closing videos to learn more about what's next. You can take the candidates back through to the survey or back to your careers page. Within 30 minutes, they can receive a feedback report like this, where they can automatically be sent. This can help reduce some of that requests you get into your talent acquisition team and learn more about how they performed on the assessment. Next, then we're going to have a look, what does that look like for the hiring team? So those of you who'd be familiar with our video interview will recognize this in terms of the look and feel. Your teams on the left side will be presented with those automated assessment scores. So the game-based assessments will generate these percentile scores. You see Esmeralda 94, Matthew 92, Natasha 89. In those tiers, top tier, middle tier, and bottom tier. So what that really allows them to do is very quickly identify which candidates they want to spend their time with, and then still review the interviews as we're seeing now. So the recruiter here is navigating through the different candidates. They're able to speed up the playback, watch their interview questions, and then give them ratings and recommendations. So you're combining the automated AI-based score with the human evaluation and getting that really powerful combination of the two, very, very quickly identifying which ones you want to spend time with using the assessment score from the left side, and then quickly navigating through the different candidates within that group. So significantly faster than a traditional type of phone screen. The final sort of static report here gives you much more information as to how the candidate performed on those different sub-competencies. So here you'll see down below scores against those elements we mentioned earlier, like emotional intelligence and cognitive ability. With a 5-point scoring scale in each case, you can really drill down into the details in terms of how the candidates performed in these different areas, and what those scores look like to give you a much better idea in the detail side of which candidates to progress forward. Okay, so I wanted to leave some time here at the end to be able to take any questions that we may have. So at this stage, thank you for listening, and I'm just going to pass back to Ashna to see, back to you, Ashna.
Yes, thank you, Greg. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question box on your control panel. And it looks like we already have a few questions here. So I'm going to go ahead and read out the first one for you, Greg.
Great.
How do you map an organization competency framework towards the game-based assessments?
Yeah, so essentially how that works is we would start out by assigning one of our occupational psychologists to work with the client. Excuse me. It tends to be that some clients do already have a competency framework mapped out, which is absolutely great, and that really does help with that process. In other cases, they may not have one done, and that's okay. We can certainly help with that. But what we would then do is, through that analysis of job documentation, by talking to incumbents in the role and their managers, we do that through focus groups and through surveys. We start to build a really clear picture of what is it that you need to measure. And we find our clients, of course, they know what does success look like in these roles. So by understanding that through those different modalities, we can then really start to not just rely on the job description, but build a picture that we then start mapping our pre-built competencies against. And that essentially is how the design of the assessment is put together for each individual company and job role.
I hope that answered your question, Mathir. Let's move on to the other two questions that he has. So he asks if this includes technical skills assessment as well, and also if the HireVue platform is available in Arabic language.
Yeah, so in terms of the technical skills, we have a number of ways in which they can be measured. One, of course, key area of technical skills these days is software engineering. So we have those. I didn't talk about it so much today, but we have the excuse me, a product that we call HireVue, which is a technical test for software engineers and allows you to set, challenges which are automatically scored around 20 different coding languages. So, potential candidates can come in and quickly complete tests. It will show you not just their accuracy score, but give you some indication of potential plagiarism if that is present. In terms of other types of technical tests, we have clients using the platform to deliver case studies, which are then reviewed by the team, work samples, whether that's through a written form or through presentation, using screen sharing technology. So a lot of ways in which you can indeed test for technical skills. The second question there about Arabic, we don't yet support Arabic in terms of that right to left language. It's something we're looking at the moment to see how we could add that in. We do support 40 other languages. Of course, we do have some clients in the Middle Eastern region already, primarily using us, of course, in English. But of course, many of them are also international clients who are hiring in other parts of the world as well.
All right, thank you, Greg. So moving on to the other question. People have concerns as to how accurate is the AI, and how do you basically compensate for not being a face-to-face interview, and how do you test the efficiency?
The last piece was efficiency, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it sounds like that question might have been more geared toward our interview assessments, but in terms of the game-based assessments, let me just answer that one first. When it came to the design and testing of the game-based assessments, we did a lot of testing it against traditional cognitive tests. We know, of course, that for many, many years, cognition tests and IQ tests have been out there. So essentially what we did is use the ICAR, which is one of the most well-known bodies of cognitive ability testing, correlated the results of our game-based assessments with those traditional methods and saw incredibly high levels of correlation. What we've also done is studies with certain clients. One of the world's largest oil companies also wanted to do a correlation study with us. They've been using a traditional cognitive ability test for many years with another vendor. And in the first several months, they wanted to correlate our results with them. And they actually found ours to be more accurate and more predictive than the one they've been using for many years before that. So a number of ways in which we've done that to test that our games are indeed, measuring and accurately predicting what they're supposed to be measuring. In terms of the efficiency of this, of course, what it allows recruiters to do is combine the interview and the assessment together in one step, and that in itself reduces a huge amount of workflow. When you compare that to a traditional process where candidates are often invited, first of all, to a phone screen, that's maybe 30 minutes with the recruiter, and then, of course, moved on to separate interviews and then moved on to separate assessments. Those individual steps are often driven by recruiters and can often become a bottleneck when you have high volumes of candidates. So by compressing these together into a single step, we see huge efficiency gains because you can very, very quickly move large volumes of candidates through these steps where candidates are the ones taking them in their own time.
Okay.
Okay.
That's interesting. Do you think a business consultant could be assessed through this gaming assessment platform?
So we have certainly a very wide range of types of roles being assessed through this platform today. It's sometimes people will ask me, surely this is okay for early talent or for graduate roles. What about everything else? We actually have clients using us. EY, one example, using us today for professional hiring. Heidrick and Struggles using us for exec level hiring. So very much the case that, yeah, right through the board, the cognitive ability tends to be a common requirement in pretty much every role. And in fact, external research suggests that it's, can have as much of an impact at CEO level as 8 times, even at entry level 2 times the impact in terms of job productivity, somebody with high cognition compared to lower cognition. So that element of cognitive ability and its relation to job success is very well proven and out there. And as such, these can be a great fit for pretty much any role you could think of.
Interesting. Thanks, Greg. We have another related question to this. It's not related to job roles, but somebody wants to know that how they can use this for the education sector, particularly in schools.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we actually have a few clients in the US already using us in the education sector. Now, it depends on the kind of roles you're talking about, but again, whether it's kind of more academic staff. In fact, some of the schools in America use this for security staff. We also have done something recently. The word school, of course, means different things in America to here. So let me just expand that out a bit. We also, in our interest to kind of give something back and be more inclusive in the community, we're offering a program now for universities to allow them to quickly use the platform for their students, for students to come in and sign up and take an interview just to get used to the technology. So if it's for that kind of university-based space, by all means, we can talk later. But we're offering some great sort of platform and entry level for very low cost at the moment. In some cases for free, to help support those types of organizations. So yeah, we can talk more about that later if that's something you're interested in.
Sure. Yeah. Somebody would like to know that are more intangible skills like empathy and social emotional intelligence also assessed through this platform or not?
Yeah, so earlier we talked a bit about the emotional intelligence game. So in that first category I showed of the 4 that we call working with people, we have a series of games which are designed to measure that emotional intelligence, which can be a great fit for some of those customer-facing roles. So one of those is a game that shows a series of short videos, and then below that there are a series of 6 emotions that the candidate needs to select which one was being displayed in the video. And as with all the games, that it gets more and more difficult as you go through the levels. In some cases, you're just seeing a video of somebody's eyes for just a few seconds, and you have to select, were they showing happiness or sadness or the different emotions. So in that type of format, you can quickly understand those who are better at empathy and connecting with others. So yeah, absolutely, those can be measured through games as well.
That's excellent. So does the platform have the ability to integrate to other talent marketplace or LXP ecosystems?
So our primary focus until now has been connecting it with the likes of applicant tracking systems and candidates relationship management CRM systems, more so because our targets or most of our clients tend to be those enterprise clients who are looking to make better use of their existing investments like an ATS, embed our assessments into that by integrating them. So it's less the case of connecting it with job boards or other places like that. But they can be done. It is possible to set up what we call a shareable interview link from HireVue that you can then embed on other platforms and have candidates come in and quickly self-register to take the assessment. So it can be done. But as I say, our more common focus is integrating with some of those applicant tracking systems. And we have pre-built integrations with the likes of Oracle Taleo, Oracle Recruiting Cloud, SAP SuccessFactors, Workday, and all the others you'd imagine.
Okay, that's good. I think this is the last and final question. Somebody wants to see a sample of the assessment results and what does it exactly measure?
Yeah, so briefly show some of that in the video there, but we can I can bring up one. I don't know if I've got it lined up here. Essentially, what it will show you is a breakdown of the individual candidate scores. Here we go. I've got one here actually. So you'll see an overall is an example of a candidate called Laura. Overall assessment score here. This idea is really to kind of help the recruiter say, are these candidates moving forward? Are they moving out? Then as you move further down, you'd see a lot more detail for each of the individual competencies measured. So in the case of something like emotional intelligence, you'd see a score against empathy and against influence for some of those leadership roles. In the case of cognitive ability, it's broken down into these 4 areas here. And in each case, you'll see a score along these 5-point scale as to where the candidate has scored.
All right. I think it looks like we have covered all our questions. And Greg, is there anything else you wanted to cover up before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I just want to say thanks again for having me, Ashna, and thank you everyone in the audience today for joining us. It's been great to spend time with you today. And yeah, please do connect with us if you'd like to learn more.
Yes, great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time.